Welcome back. We keep our focus with the statements that have come in from President Zelenskyy, and important statements that need to be looked at closely because he's called out NATO once again. He says that he's lost interest in NATO and that the alliance is afraid of confrontation with Russia. Strong statement indeed coming in from President Zelenskyy, who earlier on was extremely eager, extremely keen on joining hands with NATO, now slamming NATO for its inaction. He's also blamed the West. He says while Russians are to blame for the killings, responsibility is shared by those who for 13 days in their Western offices haven't been able to approve an obviously necessary decision, who didn't save our cities from these bombs and missiles, although they can. Once again, essentially blaming NATO for refusal of a no-fly zone over Ukraine. So strong statements coming in from President Zelenskyy, as he's also dropped a big hint as far as recognizing Crimea is concerned. He says we can discuss this and find a compromise on how people will live there. Let me quickly go across to our geopolitical analyst joining us this afternoon, Pratikrit. Good afternoon to you. Now, big statement indeed, because, for the longest time we've seen President Zelenskyy, maintain that they are extremely eager to be a NATO ally, and they're not going to be, budging from their demands. They're not going to be withdrawing. They're not going to be surrendering. But suddenly we do see a shift in what he's saying. We do see him calling out NATO and the West openly.
Well, it's a very sad state of affair. Ukraine is actually facing a disastrous war. But the reality also is that President Zelenskyy has realized something which has often been talked about in the past, that NATO has used, Ukraine as a dispensable pawn and left it in the lurch to fight on its own. Frankly, the reality from a long time, for almost 14 years now, Ukraine has been trying to be part of NATO. In the last 14 years, neither NATO categorically rejected Ukraine, that they would never allow Ukraine to be part of NATO, nor allowed Ukraine to be part of NATO. So they actually left them hanging somewhere in between, and this is why the war is happening. If NATO had been so much concerned about Ukraine, and if it was only about the membership, they would have actually taken a backdated membership literally and gone out to help NATO, Ukraine. They didn't do that because they don't want to open a right-away front with Russia and fight it out. Unfortunately, what they actually wanted to do, this is my understanding, they wanted to use Ukraine as a pawn to fight it out against Russia, and they knew that Ukraine will actually, bear the brunt. This will destabilize the whole region. A lot of other countries will get scared and panicky. They will buy more weapon systems, and the pot will keep boiling. This is how Russia will be projected as an evil country, and the deep state military-industrial complexes will have huge business to make out of it. It's a very sad state of affair, but Ukraine should have realized long time back that it would have been far better for them to remain a neutral state like a Switzerland, like a Sweden, and remain prosperous by having good relation both with NATO and on the Russian side as well. Unfortunately, they did not do it, and they actually ended up being now nowhere today. This is extremely sad state of affair, and it's a lesson for a lot of other countries. It might have a ramification for Quad-like dispensations as well, because in the last 6 months on 2 occasions we have seen that, first in case of Afghanistan, where the US-led coalition actually withdrew suddenly, and the country was left in the lurch in the hand of brutal Talibans. And this time also you had a disastrous war going on, and the NATO members, EU members, and America, for all the grand lectures and standing ovations and speeches that they have given, nothing more they have done to actually prevent the war. They haven't even categorically for once said that let Ukraine be neutral, let it remain in peace. We don't want Ukraine to be part of NATO. It should remain neutral and be in peace. This is where the problem is. They still do not categorically deny Ukraine the NATO membership, neither they accept it into NATO. And this is the war that has happened, which is having, it's not a war, it's not a localized war. Every country, including India, would suffer from it because of the rise in price of commodities and rise in price of crude oil, which is expected to go up humongously. So I think Zelensky's realization is a tragic reality of today. And it's a lesson for many other countries that you have to be, you have to push come to a shove. You have to fight your own war. Nobody would come to fight your war. So the best thing that you can do is to prevent the war before it starts.